Good evening, folks. And tonight we're going to talk about the Supreme Court's ruling of 9-0 in favor of Trump. I mean, let's talk about that here. Yeah, the Colorado liberal justices, not all of them, but the few that were there, the liberal majority, I think it was like 4-3, I think, I'm not really sure, pretty much all made themselves perfectly clear. And then other states were trying to follow suit as well. They don't want it to be perfect. They don't want it to be that way. They don't want Trump on the ballot. Well, apparently, this isn't the first time it's ever happened. The Civil War was the other time it happened. Because during the Civil War, if you go to all the southern states, exception of every state that seceded from the Union, the exception of Virginia, literally all the slave states go back to the Civil War period, okay? 1860 election. What the Republicans are running. You got, well, it's between Breckinridge, Lincoln, and Lincoln. Okay, here's pretty much how it all comes down. Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina are all won by Breckinridge. All those are soon to be Confederate states. Even John Breckinridge himself ends up a turncoat into a Confederate. Now, these states are won by Bell. Tennessee, which also goes to the Confederacy, Virginia, and Virginia. But these states that are, you also got Kentucky, which was a slave state, which was also a slave state, but did not secede from the Union. Maryland was another state that Breckinridge won, but did not secede from the Union. Now we're going to go over the percentage numbers for each candidate in each of these states. Starting with the Deep South that John Breckinridge won. Breckinridge, obviously we'll go where he's not even at. Breckinridge won 54%. John Bell, 30.89%. Stephen Douglas, 15.11%. Then in Arkansas, you got Breckinridge again, 53.06%. Bell gets 37.05%. And Douglas gets 9.89%. Then you get the Delaware. Then Delaware's another slave state. And Breckinridge wins that one. But it also didn't secede from the Union. Breckinridge gets that one. 45.54% to 24.24% for Bell. And Lincoln is on this one. To Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln, 23.72%. And Douglas at 6.61%. These are some of the states that we're going to go with what Breckinridge won. Then Breckinridge won Florida, 62.23% to 36.1%. And Douglas won 1.68%. Now, Breckinridge also won Georgia, 48.89% to Bell, 40.26% to Douglas, 10.85%. Now, Iowa, we'll talk about Iowa and all the red states momentarily here. Now, Maryland, another Breckinridge state, which didn't secede from the Union. Breckinridge won. It was a very close contested state, actually, according to these percentage polls. Breckinridge 45.93% to Bell's 45.14%. Douglas had a distant 6.45% to 2.48%. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of watching the Jeffersons and watching and giving you guys this information at the same time. Then the Mississippi election, you got Breckinridge at 59%, Bell 36.25%, and Douglas at 4.75%. Then Missouri, you have Douglas at 35.52%, Bell 35.26%, Breckinridge 18.94%, and then Lincoln at 10.28%. Another slave state, but it did not secede from the Union. But Douglas won. Then we get North Carolina, where Breckinridge won 50.51 to Bell's 46.66% to Douglas 2.83%. Then South Carolina, nobody else was on it but Breckinridge. 100% of the vote went to Breckinridge. Nobody else was even on the ticket but Breckinridge. So if you tried to vote for somebody else other than Breckinridge, you wouldn't get the vote. Now we get to Tennessee. That's all the Breckinridge's states. Now we get to Tennessee with the Bell states. John Bell wins Tennessee over Breckinridge, 47.72% to 44.55% over Breckinridge, to Douglas's distant 7.72%. Now, Virginia, which seceded from the Union, Bell also won, but Breckinridge in a very tight race. If this was nowadays, this would be a very, very tight race. This would probably be a recount right now, if this was actually nowadays. Bell, 44.63%. Breckinridge, 44.54%. Douglas, 9.71%. Lincoln, 1.13%. So, that there shows you the big gap between Bell and Breckinridge. Now, Vermont pretty much went in one way. And then we go over here to Kentucky, which was pretty much in the hands of not even a 1% vote for Lincoln didn't even get 1%. He got less than 1% on here in Kentucky. Bell was your big winner at 45.18%. Breckinridge came in second with 36.35%. Douglas at 17.54%. Lincoln at 0.93%. So not even a 1% victory. And then you have your other states. That was kind of like a split vote for Lincoln and Douglas, Bell, Breckinridge. Split 51.87% in favor of Breckinridge and Douglas and Bell in a fusion, while Lincoln got 48.13% of the state. So technically it was a draw in New Jersey, while New York went to Lincoln at 53 point, also a fusion card as well. That also played a fusion card as well. 53.71% to 46.29%, not individual cards. Now, Minnesota, you have Lincoln at 63.44% to Douglas 34.27%, Breckenridge 2.15% to Bell 1.14%. Not even 1% on that one. Then you got that state up north, Michigan. Lincoln 57.23%, Douglas 41.99%, Breckenridge 0.52%, and Bell 0.26%. So Breckenridge, the further north we go, it seems like he's not as well loved, it looks like. And then we go to Massachusetts. Lincoln 62.8%, Douglas 20.23%, Bell 13.15%, and Breckenridge 3.63%. Then we go to Maine. Lincoln 62.24%, Douglas 29.42%, Breckenridge 6.31%, and Bell 2.03%. Then we got Iowa. Lincoln 54.61%, Douglas 43.22%, Bell 1.37%, and Breckenridge 0.80%. Not even a 1% point. Then you got California, very closely contested race between Lincoln, Douglas, and Breckenridge. Lincoln coming out on top at 32.32%, Douglas at 31.71%, Breckenridge at 28.35%, and Bell at 7.6%. So that there shows where that all comes out at. In New Hampshire, Lincoln also wins at 56.9%, to Douglas at 39.26%, Breckenridge at 3.22%, and Bell at 0.62%. Now, Ohio, there was another person on the ticket, but he didn't really he was like an independent there. Lincoln, 51.24%, Douglas, 43.30.3%, Bell, 2.82%, Breckenridge, 2.61%, and Garrett Smith, 0.03%. Then you got Oregon, where it was very closely contested between Breckenridge and Lincoln, but Lincoln ends up getting the go, where Douglas ends up getting it. Getting the distant third. Lincoln wins 36.202%, Breckenridge 34.37%, Douglas 27.99%, Bell 1.44%. Then we get Pennsylvania. Lincoln 56.26%, Breckenridge 37.54%, Douglas 3.52%, and Bell 2.68%. Then we go to Vermont. Lincoln heavily won this one. 75.86%, Douglas 19.41%, Breckenridge 4.19%, Bell 0.49%, and 0.06% write-ins. So there's some decent amount of write-ins there, and same with Garrett Smith in Ohio, but literally, if you want to know the truth here, the Supreme Court's call here to the U.S. Supreme Court pretty much it's made it clear that if you're going to try to, and in all these states except for Virginia, that seceded from the Union, didn't have Lincoln on the ballot, but yet Lincoln somehow still managed to win it all. That's literally how this all happened. Lincoln won it all, but yet somehow he managed to. That's literally what happened here. Lincoln. You wonder sometimes. Now, with that big percentage gapage between Douglas and Lincoln and Vermont, the close percentage gaps in both Oregon and California, but yet Breckinridge was the only person on the ticket in South Carolina. Now you kind of wonder what's next. Well, we'll talk more about that some other time. And this is just the issue that the left has. They just don't want an opponent. And that's exactly what happened in South Carolina when they only wanted one person went running. And that was Breckinridge. And then you have Bell, who was always the third person. He was that. He was the fourth guy. And Lincoln pretty much just overpowered everybody. That was it. Well, I really hate to cut us off, but I got some other things I gotta take care of. With that being said, hope you all have a good weekend. With that being said, I'm out of here. Peace.